I think it would just be nice to talk about how, as mediums, how do we approach grief, or does grief affect us as much as somebody who hasn't explored their mediumship ability? And not what the process is, because there's no process with grief.
It is, and I do hope that this very often emotional topic will help people maybe open up and wanted to talk. And if you want to send either myself or Martin an email, I'm sure we can sit down, listen, and sort of read it and get a answer back. But as Martin said, there's no easy way, or there's no sort of do A, B, C to get past grief. It affects us in different ways. My mother passed away about, it's coming up, it'll be 3 years in December. I'm happier with it now. And at the time of passing, I was fortunate where there was the five of us. That's my three sisters and my brother. We were all there at my mum's bedside. I can recall when it was first said, "Oh, mum's got cancer." I was thinking, how am I going to cope when mum goes? And I was quite scared. And I thought, I'm going to fall to bits. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And my guys just gathered round. There was a really nice feeling of warmth, of love, of saying, well, you'll be okay. And sort of reminder that life, sort of death isn't the end. It's a part of the journey, and I fully believe that we do all survive physical death. We were all round me mum's house, and I was sat in the kitchen. There was me brother, my younger sister there, and my other two sisters were sat with me mum, and I was, me brother was getting anxious, bless him, and I said to him, I said, look, don't worry, I'll let you know when time is, because I'll see all the people walking through. What do you mean, all those people walking through? So then I taught him about mediumship, and then I said, look, there's already a gentleman pacing up outside the parlour door. I'm, well, should we call the front room a parlour? And it was very much a case of he's pacing up, no, outside the parlour. So my brother said, "Oh, it's not our dad, is it?" I said, "Well, he's telling me he's Danny." "Oh, bloody hell, And I said, "Look, just calm down, with a bit of an odd thing to say at that time. Then we were called through. My mum passed, bless her, and it was very peaceful, and it was quite nice, And that, I know that sounds odd to say, but I didn't want my mum to go, but that was a selfish thing in saying, well, if my mum's in pain, I wanted to not be in pain, but at the same time, I still want my mum here. So it was a conflict. But I then talked to my sisters, and I said to them, I said, look, I said, Nana was here, there was a couple of the uncles were there, and I mentioned this gentleman called Danny, and I said, he's telling me he's in the photo album with two other people. So she scanned through. I said, that's him. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's Grandad, Danny. And I thought, who? I've never met him in my life. He died, I would say, maybe 10 years before I was 10 years or even earlier before I was born. So that I thought, wow, that's really nice. The thing that got me, I woke up in the middle of the night, went to the toilet, and I thought, my mum's outside. I could feel her energy, so beautiful. I opened the toilet door, half expecting to see her in full colour as I normally do, but I was getting a very strong clair sentience, and I realised, it's early days, and perhaps my mum couldn't show herself in how she is, but the feelings, and I can remember I said something in my own mind, and I thought, wow, she feels the same energy as Nana. And, it's like mother, like daughter, the same energy. And I walked to the top of the stairs and I turned to where the energy was. I said, come on, Mum, again, in my mind, not to wake up the family members. And the energy turned to walk with me. So I know it's Mum. And we had a good chat. And that helped. And for the first year, I was fine. I thought I'd be in bits, and then all of a sudden it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was, do you call it, lethargic. I wasn't interested. I didn't want to do anything. I felt really down, and I just plodded on day by day, and it sort of lifted about 4 months ago. I suddenly felt, oh wow, I've been turned back on again. I can see spirit more clearly, and it's almost as if I've having the worst thing that at that time could happen to me in losing my mum, it sort of opened up everything was clearer. I see spirit clearer, I hear them clearer, I sense them clearer. It's beautiful. So maybe that was, sort of letting your fear go, but more so knowing, and I've had it many a time where I can be just walking around the house, and then I get the familiar phrase, and I say, "Hello, Mum," top of my voice, "Hello, darling, I love you." There was one time, because my family are doubting Thomases, I was driving to a paranormal event in I think it was Warwick, I think, to be honest. I can remember my mum talking to me, said, "Look, I'm in the car." I said, "I can't talk to you." I said, "I'm driving." So I said, "Wait till I get to the nearest service station." So I pulled over. I said, "Come on then." And I got my phone out. I typed it all down as I was listening to what my mum was said, and I sent it to each of my family. And it was a Wednesday, and my mum said, "I've been round. So and so was doing this. So and so was doing that. This," and they all got back to me. Said, "How do you know we were doing what we were doing at that time?" I said, "Because Mum has been round," and they freaked out. "Oh my goodness, I've had a dead person in my house." And I said, "No, you've had Mum. Mum loves you. Mum hasn't gone anywhere." But it's open to family in a way that we now talk about death openly. There's none of this, or do you call it taboo? So now we're a close family anyway, but we all have a good joke about Mum, because she was a daft bugger, bless her. Pardon me for swearing, folks, and forget. But she would make us all laugh, even if it was a dark time. She would make us all giggle, and I think that's where I got some of my humour from. Laughing at times are bad, but then again, it could be worse. So,
Absolutely. No,
Mum,
that's good. What you were saying about you felt there were people coming. Were they coming to not take her away? I mean, coming to greet her? Were they? How
yes,
did?
yeah, it was weird because I was very much aware of me Nana being there, and I told my little sister she was over the moon. "Oh, Nana, bless her." And then all of a sudden, I just saw a couple of people walking from the right hand side of the house, which would have been the outside wall, walking through the kitchen into the parlour. And I saw them there. And there was a couple of my uncles, and I had a little bit of a smile. I thought, "Oh, bless them." There was a young lady, and I thought, I don't know who that is. So the only thing I can think of is probably my mum's grandmother, just sort of walking through. But Danny, my granddad Danny, was very respectful. He was a Catholic. They would have laid people out in rest in the front room, but he was pacing up and down, out of respect from my mum. But what I didn't realise until afterwards, my mum did the same for him. My mum nursed him right at the end until he passed away. She was there right at the end, and my mum used to be a nurse, so it's natural for her to want to be doing so. So I just feel he's coming back to do that same kindness, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that in my father's side of the family, they had several stories of family members just before they were dying, well, on their deathbed, just
Yeah.
before they passed away, actually sitting up and saying, "Oh, Jack's here," and and then passing away. And my dad remembered when his granddad passed away. He said he was on the bed and he opened his eyes and he'd had a stroke. He couldn't move. His face had all slumped, and suddenly he got up and he looked normal. He looked like he'd not had a stroke. And he said, "Oh, Cecil and so and so's here." And then he lay back down and died.
Oh wow.
And that was certainly on my dad's side was this very strong belief that people came back. Although my dad was very, very skeptical. He believed certainly that something weird happened when those two people died, that somebody came back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a funny old thing, grief. I know at the beginning of the year I was flicking through a book in a charity shop, and it was on Japanese traditions and things, and something stood out, and it was mono no aware, and it's a Japanese term, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And Spirit very clearly said to me, "Remember that." And I thought, what's that, mono no? So I didn't have time to read the book, so I went home, I went on the internet, typed it in, and it means, roughly speaking, because any translation, a lot of the meaning's lost, but it means awareness of the impermanence, a deeper, gentle sadness about the reality of life. Being sort of semi-Buddhist as such is one thing that you kind of learn, is that nothing is permanent, and And I thought, well, that's probably to do with changing of businesses last year, coming away from that sort of thing. But in fact, this year it's meant many other things. And in July, my father became ill. In fact, sorry, it was June. It was in Father's Day. He was rushed into hospital, and then he died at the end of July. And it was a very quick illness, and anybody who's family members or people they know who's had cancer, it's a shocking illness, absolutely shocking.
It certainly is.
It's the physical part of cancer is utterly terrible. The pain, the suffering, and my dad was lucky in that he didn't have so much the pain, but by the end, my last conversation with him was that he'd had enough now, and he said, I'm ready to go. I'm ready. And within 3 days of me meeting him, he'd passed away. And I honestly believe that he passed away on his own merit. Cancer didn't kill him. He decided that he was ready to go, and he died. I honestly believe that, because they were saying he was going to continue he was going to continue longer. Honestly, the outlook was that he was going to have months of painful existence. He'd already was very tired and very fed up. And as I say, I believe he luckily died, which seems very, very strange. And as you said, it's because you're being selfish in a way, aren't you? You're kind of saying, my dad's suffering, and he really was suffering, but then again, I'm saying, no, I wish he hadn't died. And it's like, it's a funny old thing. And it's interesting that the Sunday morning when he passed away, things really seemed quite strange, and I couldn't really. I got up, things were strange, and then at 20 past 9, my brother called me to let me know he passed. And at first, I got a sense of relief.
Yeah.
And I really thought, that's why I felt a little bit out of sorts. That's why I knew that there was we had no inclination or no idea that he was going to die today or anything. It literally, even the hospital was caught short. He just died. But at first, obviously, you're going through the grief process, and obviously you're very upset. And within a few days, I was aware. It was very odd. It wasn't when I expected it. It wasn't like I was sat in a room and thought, "Oh, come on, Dad, come through." And suddenly he comes through and says, "Oh, hi, son. Yeah, you were right. There is a spirit world." It wasn't anything like that. It was literally things were happening in the house. I've got 2 children, as you know, and TV's on. Kids were arguing about playing Fortnite or something. I went upstairs. I thought, "Oh, I'll grab a book." I sat on my bed. I picked up this book. And I knew he was there.
Yeah.
I thought, "Oh, Dad, you're here." I said, "Hi, Dad, are you all right?" And I just felt very calm.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very relaxed. And I felt this was coming from him.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of my things, and this is really stupid, Ian, and you will laugh at me, but one of the things I thought is, well, my dad's quite skeptical, and the transition over through to consciousness, to the spirit world. Maybe he'd fight it, maybe he'd think, what's all this, and kind of really, and it wasn't. I just felt calm, relaxed, happy, and I just felt his presence there, very strong. Yeah. Just
it's beautiful though.
Well, it was. It was. I thought. There was no communication, but just to say, "I'm all right. Stop thinking that."
Yes, there wasn't it? Just because it wasn't verbal doesn't mean it wasn't there. Don't mean to be rude to you there, Martin, but there is. There's the feelings, the contentment. Maybe that could be how Dad wanted to say, or what he was able to say at that time.
I think so as well, and I think with Dad was. He continually worked up to he was 74 when he died, and he always worked right up to 74. He enjoyed working. He continually wanted to continue going, and now I felt that he was finally accepting that. Right, he's reached his retirement, which sounds strange, but finally he can have a rest. And it was everything about his cremation, and when we buried his ashes, everything was Dad. It was his wishes, and I just felt all the way through it, and especially with my brothers, and my younger brother's more believing than my middle brother, but certainly I do feel that they felt him around him, around them.
Yeah.
So as a medium, how did I kind of take this in? How did it help me? And obviously I'll ask you the same, but from my perspective, how did it help me? Certainly in this last 10 days, it's almost like the blood's come back to me, and it's interesting you used a similar term, that you were switched on again. I know it's only 2 months since my dad passed away, but I think spirits help me in that they've brought balance to my life, because I need balance at the moment. I need, from a professional point of view and also from a family point of view, I can't let myself wallow in the grief, which it isn't a bad thing to do that. It's just that I've got to do that. But spirits supported me in that. My two main guides have really been around me. I've been aware of them. It's almost like that they've backed off, rather than saying, "Oh, you've got to do some readings," or bombarding me with anything. They've just kind of stood off, waiting for me to say, "Yeah, I'm ready now."
Yeah, yeah, same Martin. Like I say, I suddenly felt switched on, but I was still able. And what helped me, is helping people. Where I was very much aware, as you were, of my guides being there, and I found it nice that I could still talk to Mum. I even though didn't physically hear her voice. The intonation of the thought pattern in my head was Mum, without a shadow of doubt, and it made me smile, because it's almost a case of I'm still the daft person. It was very much, I was still doing me demos. I would go to a demo and the information would come through and flow, and I didn't feel bad about it. Didn't feel het up. I wasn't worried about not feeling het up or thinking I should be crying. It was the fact that we survived physical life. So my belief through spiritualism is really what sort of brought it all together, and what better testament in helping people through their grief and saying, well, I've talked to my mum, I've done this, and doing this podcast helps me. I'm sure it helps you, Martin, and it'll be hopefully of help to other people, so they can more openly talk about it.
It's like what you were saying. It's whether you're a spiritualist or whether you are any religion, or maybe you're not a religion at all, but you have some beliefs that you carry with you. But I think for me, it is the fact that the consciousness continues, that we continue in some respect, has been further confirmed, has been, my guides were there to guide me, to make sure that I was there for if they were needed. And so, as I say, certainly within, I mean, this again, we can talk about coincidences, but certainly within this last sort of 10 days, as I've started coming out of it, I've suddenly started having, a couple of emails or a couple of things to get me back on the horse again as well. And the other day, I talked to a lovely lady who she needed a chat, and it became a tarot reading, and then it helped me go forward. And it's almost like that person came into my life, so that again it helps me get back on the horse. It helps me start getting back on track. And
Yeah, it gives you focus again, doesn't it?
absolutely, yeah, it really does help me get back on. And I think with anybody, when it comes to grief, if anybody's still suffering with grief out there, one thing that I've learned is that there's no rules to grief. There's no rights. There's no wrongs. You deal with it in your own way. And one thing I would say is talk to people about it, because I know from experience that if you don't talk about it and you do hold it up, you again carry this baggage. And also, as well, is one thing is the mind is very, very over imaginative. So last conversations, you start going through all that sort of stuff. Or did I treat that person right? Did I do this? Did I do that? And one thing certainly is, when these people get into spirit, they're not bothered about stuff like that. They're just bothered that there is love there, that they love you, and no doubt you love them.
Oh yeah, very, 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 very true.
So yeah, I think what we'll do, Ian, is and this is out to all the podcast listeners out there, is we'll have to do another question and answers session as well.
Yes, definitely.
The our reincarnation and dreams podcast is one of our most popular. And just to say to everybody out there, it's amazing. We've had 4,000 listens by the time this goes out. It's just amazing. I don't think I imagined 4,000.
No, no.
Imagine it being listened to for 4,000 times. To be honest, Ian.
Yeah, no, I just find it. I've got to stop saying I find it weird because at the end of the day, it isn't weird. It was what was said was going to happen, so it's happening.
Myself and Ian, we had this feeling that something was going to start in March this year, and it was really unusual. We were kind of thinking, well, what's going to happen? You know, end of March, beginning of April. Nothing really physically happened, but lo and behold, beginning of April, boom, the podcast takes off. 3 episodes in, and suddenly we're achieving around 700 to 800 listens a month, and it's just been incredible. Thank you everybody who's listening and supporting us. And please do, if you've got any questions about what we do, you can email us through our website, which is currently being updated. We do have a contact form in there. Send in a question and we will answer it on our next time we do a question and answer session. Even if you think the question is silly, simple, stupid, whatever, send it in, because we can elaborate on that and we can talk to you more about it. So please send it in. We won't put your name on there. We're just interested in your question.